WDXE.
You know what that tune means? If I've done everything right here, maybe. Hey, we are live on WDXE, and we have the Green Acres man himself with me today. And by the way, Wendel, I don't know if you know this or not, but we're also live on Facebook and YouTube.
Is that right?
That is correct. I've got Wendell Smith in here with me today for Friends and Neighbors with Jeff Hood and Wendell. Not a stranger to WDXE at all.
No.
Been here many, many times over many, many years.
Back on the square?
Yeah, way back. And we appreciate you agreeing to come in and visit with us today. By the way, the phone lines will be open, and we can talk to Wendell. You can talk to Wendell. 766-9393 is the number. And I think I've got all the buttons pushed. I've had some technical difficulties here.
You didn't warn me about some of this stuff,
I
Jeff.
didn't warn you. I told you. I kind of told you what we were doing, and then I didn't tell you what we were doing. So hopefully, I've got all the buttons pushed. I've had, like I said, some technical difficulty. Let me check and see if we're actually where we're supposed to be, and hopefully we are. We'll see.
I see us right over there.
Do you see us?
Yeah.
You see? There we are.
That's
How about
a
that?
tricky little mic. It turns its little head.
Yeah, this thing right here is actually the camera. And the mics are
Yeah.
the mics. So we doing what we do. We're doing what we do. But Wendell Smith, again, not an unfamiliar voice and maybe an unfamiliar face to radio.
Could be. And many people would like that to remain so.
But you've been around here in a part of the community as long as I can remember.
Oh,
And
I was trying to think. I'm probably knocking on 30 years. I was here for the Great Flood. I had moved to town time enough to put up a wooden fence around my backyard that could promptly be washed away.
Yeah. So you're not a native Lawrence County.
I'm not one of the Smiths around.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of Smiths around.
There are that.
But you're not a native Lawrence County, and so that's one of the things that I've done here at this show is when I've had guests on is kind of get their story. And of course, I've known you, but I've known you in the capacity of being.
It's a law. Republicans in Congress
What in
do
the
not
world?
vote.
Hold on, that wasn't supposed to happen. I've told you I've had technical difficulty here.
I can see what they think of
And
me.
I don't even have it on, and it just came on.
No, I saw that.
How about that? So anyway,
Technology is just plain wonderful.
we
isn't
just want to calm you down over there, Mr. Computer. But anyway, what I was trying to say is I've known you in the capacity and your role here in the county as the county
it? Extension
the
agent.
county extension agent,
Primarily horticulture.
and all things agriculture, pretty much.
Yep.
And that's what we've known about you. But today I want to go back deeper in the Wendell Smith world. And find out where you came from. You know, where were you born and raised, and how did you become Wendell?
Well, I'll start with that last one. Actually, my mother was from South Texas, out in the mesquite brush near Victoria.
Oh yeah, really?
And she had an uncle, Fred Wendell. That's a 1L Wendell.
Okay.
And so there's a Wendell Road down there still.
Really?
It's out in the middle of nowhere. But that's how I became Wendell. Born in Nashville, Tennessee.
Born in Nashville.
At the old St. Thomas hospital that was
So
torn
how
down.
did she come from Texas to be in Nashville?
Well, she met my daddy, who I always referred to as Daddy, so I'll just keep on doing it.
That'd be a good idea.
And he was in the military, and I guess he was down there at base, maybe an officer's candidate school or something. It's World War II, and
So was he a Nashvilleian? He grew up.
he grew
there?
up in Coffee County.
Coffee County.
Right on the Warren County line between Manchester and McMinnville.
Okay. All right.
And I ended up farming.
That's beautiful country over
Yeah,
there.
that's nice. It's a little pretty similar here, soils-wise and things. It's on the Highland Rim, just like we are here in Lawrenceburg. I wound up farming that farm for about 10 years.
Did you?
After getting out of school. But
Okay.
So anyway, he wound up going into World War II. They got married, and he went into World War II and was in the 20th Armored Division under General Patton.
Really?
And the 20th got in the battle kind of late, which is probably good if you wanted to remain living, have
Yes.
better odds,
Yeah.
but was amongst the first to go into Germany
Really?
there, and the people there were just ecstatic and happy to see them. Said, we've been waiting on y'all for a long time. Probably didn't say y'all, the German.
I wonder how you say y'all in German.
I don't know. Y'allensies.
Youngsies. Yeah. But well, what a great, interesting story that is. So your father's World War and served under Patton.
Yeah, and we used to, well, not directly, but everybody was under him going through France and headed to Germany.
Right.
But interesting, I never knew, you would have never known he was in the war or the military, and he'd never mentioned a word about it or told the first story, except there was 2 big old footlockers worth of stuff in the attic.
Yeah.
As a kid, I used to get up and prowl around, but they were just happy.
They didn't talk about it a lot.
Happy to come back and go to work, and
that's true of a lot of that generation in the World War II generation. They didn't talk about it a lot.
So I've had to find out. I got 2 older brothers, older and wiser than I, and I'd hear a little bit of stories and little things from them, maybe have to ask my mother when she was around.
So you're the youngest?
I am the youngest of 3 boys.
Youngest of 3 boys. Now, where are your brothers now?
I got one in Pulaski and one in Tullahoma.
Okay, but now y'all grew up
in Donaldson, Tennessee.
In Donaldson.
Yep.
Okay, so your young years were there.
Yes.
In Donaldson, and did you play sports?
Yeah, I did. Donaldson High School, and then it merged into McGavock. So I was in the first class that went through all 3 years at McGavock. That's a big, massive conglomerate, about 3,000 students.
Yeah, that's a big school.
Donaldson, Two Rivers, and Cameron, and then people from all over Nashville showed up over there.
What year did you graduate high school?
74.
74. You're a little ahead of me, not too far.
And
if you would have been here, would have been in high school at the same time, but you'd have been leaving as I was coming in.
Yep.
How about that?
Well, that's all right. I'd go back 3 years, I guess, if I could. Pretty big conglomerate there, and
so after high school, did you go straight to work or go straight to school?
Well, I went to UT for a little bit, and then I decided I was going to get a job at the post office. There were some openings, and my parents thought I should get a college education, so I had to double back and wound up going to MTSU, graduated in agriculture at MTSU.
Okay. Well, good.
And during that time, my daddy's brother died in Coffee County, and they were half partners. So my brothers and I, and my father, we bought the other half of that farm, paid the rest of the brothers there, and so I farmed that for about 10 years until a couple of back surgeries, and that was some of the great agricultural times of our country. The grain embargo and
oh, really?
Land prices of agricultural land actually went down for about the only time in history.
So when you say farming, what type of farming?
Just row crop.
Row crops. Yeah, it's
beans, corn, and wheat. I raised some hogs, had some registered red pole cattle, and interestingly enough,
so y'all were a full-fledged farm all the way around.
Yeah, I had more than I could do most all the time. I didn't even hunt or fish for about 5 or 6 years. It's hard to imagine, but he actually met Mitchell Daniels and bought a red pole bull from Mitchell Daniels here, who raises red pole cattle.
Okay.
Out there on Valley.
Yeah.
And so got to be friends with him, and we wound up. He switched out and went all red pole eventually.
Now, I was thinking about Mitchell Daniels there. I know who you're talking about. Is he kin to Farron Daniel too?
I don't know that.
Because Farron had some red pole cattle at one time.
Okay.
Anyway, some of the folks that know who he is.
So that's an interesting dual-purpose breed, a little better milk than your average beef cow breed, and they cross very well with other beef cattle. So.
Okay.
Did that for quite a while. I bought. He wrote me a bill of sale, and I paid him like $15 or $20 for a calf when I was a youngster, and we had a farm rented in Wilson County, and had.
So how many acres did y'all row crop?
Well, when I was row cropping in Coffee County, I had about 300 and something rented. I actually rented some ground at the Hermitage, close to the Hermitage there, where the shop. He took up a job after being with the Department of Agriculture. This is my dad, selling truck-mounted fertilizer spreaders. And so their shop ended up being out there right close to the Wilson County line. And Gilbert Merritt was a circuit court judge, and he owned a bunch of property, which was once part of the Hermitage. And I actually had 115 acres of beans planted right there.
Was that before the golf courses at the...
you used to quail hunt and everything out there where all the shopping centers are.
Yeah.
But interesting, they put in Percy Priest Dam and made that lake when... we had to go to that farm in Wilson County, and through those little roads, well, they started flooding, and interesting watching a big lake fill up like that.
When was Percy Priest built? Do you know?
Gosh, I don't know. It's very early 70 when I'm not sure when they started impounding that, but
interesting.
Watching it fill up, maybe late 60, right around 70. Something like that.
Okay.
And it just and they didn't put barriers on the roads. Some of the places we would go to get to that farm, slowly the water got up to the road, and then one time it got up over it in the glare, and that's when we decided we would quit going that way. We were scared we'd
no longer go that way.
We could have, but we weren't sure we might drive off the side of the road, and then for a while the fishing in Percy Priest was just insane. I mean, the fish population just exploded. That's Stones River, impoundment.
Yeah, okay.
Pretty fertile, but the water was clear and interesting. My brother went to Vanderbilt, my oldest brother, and he would bring people home to eat a good home-cooked meal and stuff, and we'd go out to the farm, and we told them that we had that dam put in just to control. A couple of them bought it for just a second or two, and then they went,
no way. That's interesting. So you grew up in that area of Tennessee.
Yep.
And farmed, and then college.
Yeah.
Martin.
And then I farmed MTSU.
MTSU.
Yeah. So no deer. We're in Middle Tennessee hardly at that time. I tell people that there was always deer around, but you had to go to the Cumberland Plateau to see a deer, maybe Crossville or Jamestown, and maybe Hickman County had some or something like that.
When I was growing up, deer weren't as popular as they are now. I mean, as far as populace.
Just a little trivia. Daddy liked to train beagles and bird dogs, and so we small game hunted. That was our thing. Thanksgiving was just head out and then come back and eat in the afternoon. And
how about that?
Our family thing, he just loved to train those beagles and bird dogs.
Your dad, what did he do for a living other than farm? You said
he sold the New Leader fertilizer spreaders. He was the guy for Southern Kentucky, all of Tennessee, and North Alabama. Highway Equipment Company was in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Interestingly, I think Paulie Brazier went and got some of the first spreader beds and brought them in.
Oh, really?
And so I don't know how he hooked up with Paulie or where he met Paulie or the Braziers, but so we ended up with a lot of customers here as a kid. I remember a lot of names like Braziers, Jennings, Cranford Jennings and them.
Jennings,
Negus had beds or two at some time. Leland Dye up at Etheridge, had lime trucks, and so those were all customers.
So there was a beginnings of a connection way back.
Yes.
How about that? Through your dad.
Between Mitchell Daniel and then the business, of course, Lawrence County is a top 10 agriculture county in almost every category that you can come up with, whether it be.
Well, I'm contributing to that now.
All right.
I have some cows.
Okay. So, you got a barn, I know.
So we got cows. So anyway. So after MTSU, then what?
I went straight into the farming in Coffee County. I did that full time for 9 plus years.
All right. So that was that.
Yep.
And so what led to you becoming the agent?
Well, I
kind of give us the background on how that all came to be.
Went to East Tennessee for just when I had to quit farming. I just couldn't ride the combines and tractors. You learn that you're not invincible, but often you learn that too late, which I did. Just got a job at the co-op at Athens, Tennessee, and worked there for 2 or 3 years. And
Athens, Tennessee. I know where that is.
Right between Chattanooga and Knoxville.
In between.
Very nice place. Had a great time there and met a ton of good people. And I had a chance to go back to Middle Tennessee where my roots are. And so I came down and interviewed with James Earl at the co-op here and managed the fertilizer building for 3 years, what brought me to Lawrenceburg.
That's how you ended up in Lawrenceburg, was through the co-op.
Yes. Never forget coming down to interview. They were constructing Highway 43, turning it into the super slab that we know it at that time, and the dust and the earth moving stuff. And I got down here and got out of the car, and I said, I believe this is the blankety blank hottest place I've ever been to in my life. It was in the middle of the summer, and I mean, it was a smoking hot day. And I said, wow, why am I coming down? Why am I coming down here?
We do have some hot days.
It can get that way.
We do have some hot days.
I prefer to cut my hay when I cut it the last time we had that super hot. It was like 98 degrees and 60-something% humidity. And that steering wheel got too hot to hold. But anyway, that's all right. It's not like that all the time. And wound up coming down here. James Earl was a great boss and did that for 3 years. Did some soils consulting for about 5 years after that. And so I add in the paper for an extension horticulture agent.
Okay.
And, so I just put in for that and did a little presentation.
Now, is that a county or is that a state?
It's
or is it a combination?
Combination.
Okay.
Yes. And actually, I was there's TSU, Tennessee State, and University of Tennessee have what they call cooperative extension.
Okay.
And so I was actually hired by Tennessee State. So I was a state employee, but the county, kicks in money for agriculture agents and gives us a place to operate.
Okay.
And that's typical with every county, just might near every county in
so it's a cooperative between the state and the counties.
Right. Well, right. The state and the counties, correct. And so you're getting paid I got paid by Tennessee State University.
Okay.
But the county chipped in to Tennessee State to allow that to happen.
Which all counties do, I guess.
Right. So we had the county commission, and we have an ag committee. Extension has an ag committee, which is farmers and usually some folks off the county council and things like that to monitor and keep things going the right direction. And they take feedback from everybody in the community and from the. So you got a lot of bosses when you work at Extension.
Well, it seemed to fit you well. You seem to have thrived in the position, and I know that you've spent a lot of time actually coming to the radio and answering a lot of questions when we would get them here. And by the way, the phone lines are open, 766-9393 if you want to talk to Wendel. We've caught up just a little bit here. Now we're an extension agent, and now you're a visitor to the station. But you and I have also had some not only farm shared interest, but we have a music shared interest.
Sure.
We like a lot of the same. Of course, we're kind of the same generation, pretty much.
That's right.
So,
I decided I needed to learn how to play guitar and stuff in the early days. And living in Nashville, that was pretty easy to do. Lots of musicians roaming around. So.
Yeah. Well, guess who's calling us here? This is going to be a good one call. Hey, good morning. How are you, brother?
Hey, I wanted Wendell to tell how he got in the music business. When he was on radio with me, we talked about the music business a lot, and he comes around places in Nashville where they played a lot of music.
Yep.
He's a professional harmonica player. I didn't know that.
I did not know that. He left that out of what he was telling.
Yeah, well, we were starting to get to that.
Okay. Let him tell you about it.
Thank you, Ronnie. Ronnie Allen there. And, of course, he knows more about you than I do.
Well, I had a ball going in with Ronnie over there on the square in
Oh, yeah.
You know, when I came to Lawrence County and I went to check out some folks playing some music, didn't know anybody, and you know who the first person I met was sitting out there? Well, you would never guess. Elrod.
Elrod
was the first person I met in Lawrence County, and I said, boy, look at here.
Well, you got a great introduction to Lawrence County right there.
And wound up playing in a band with Shelley.
Yeah.
And what a great vocalist, tremendous, talented vocalist. I was not a great talented musician. I was more of a technician. I just decided I liked it, and I just worked and worked at it. But I didn't have perfect pitch, or I studied on it enough to skate by. But yet Ronnie right there, had a ball with him all the time, going over there. And
so what's he talking about? You being in the Nashville music business?
well, I mean, growing up there, we made bands and stuff, and I was into rock and blues. Subsequently had that blues show on the 106.1 there for 3 years here at the station.
Right.
On Sunday evenings. But then we all just went bluegrass just completely. I traded my Les Paul in for an old Gibson mandolin, and so we had a bluegrass band, and we played at the Station Inn there in Nashville every Sunday night for about a year.
Okay.
And,
well, see, I didn't know that about you.
Went around, but that my high point, I guess. I got to get on stage with Vassar Clements and play harmonica one time. That's probably the high point of mine. I didn't make any money at it, but bluegrass is hard to make money at.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of people who enjoy playing music who never make a dime.
That's right. I did not do it for the money. We just loved doing it. And, so that had a good time and met a lot of great folks along the way. When I went to East Tennessee, we had some bands and made some grocery and gas money.
Do you still play a little?
Not too much. The old hands have gotten very arthritic and things, and it's just painful. When I pick it up, I just make myself mad. So, I don't think anybody's beating the door down to hear me anymore.
I still plunk a little bit, but I've never been a professional player. I just enjoy it, and I enjoy watching my son play some.
I envision myself getting with Ronnie and touring Europe, and to
there you go,
throngs and crowds and stuff playing, but we never quite got around to that. You can always dream, can't you, Jim?
That's right. Well, that's interesting. Well, I'm glad Ronnie called because I did not know that about you.
I had not hadn't seen Ronnie in quite a while, but
he came in and did this show with me not too long ago.
Yeah.
And
wow, his history's there's some interesting things right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like somebody said, I'm just a guy, but.
Well, as far as the extension office, and of course, you spent how many years were you there?
17 years, 2003 to 2020.
17 years. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you spent quite a bit of time there. Now they were located were they always out on Buffalo Road when you?
Yes.
Okay.
That was an old doctor's office.
Right.
And that's where the sanitarium used to be or something.
I think so.
Elrod would tell me I was born right there behind there in the sanitarium.
Yep. There's a lot of people born back there.
Yeah, I guess so. And so that was a nice place, though. We had a little area. We were not cramped in a courthouse, one-room type situation like some counties are.
Mm-hmm.
So the county was very good to us, providing that place.
Well, of course, Lawrence County is an agricultural county in a big way. A lot of
from timber to row crop to cattle, in almost, like I say, in almost every major category, we're right up there in the top, if not in the top 10 of the state. We're very close.
Really?
So that's really not many counties can lay claim to that. There's row crop counties, and there's counties like Wayne have a lot of timber and things, but we've got a little of everything.
Right. Let's see if someone wants to talk to Wendell. Good morning. How are you?
Yeah, doing great. Wendell, I've noticed a few fields of cotton around, this area. And do you think that might be a trend that more cotton's going to be planted again in Lawrence County, or is this just kind of a one-year thing, you think?
Well, it's possible, and I have not. I've seen that cotton. There's a bunch pretty close to me out that direction, and I have not done any study on that. Sometimes the pricing, grain is high right now. Commodities are high, but cotton may very well be way on up there as well. Farmers that are in an area where they grow both kind of make those economic decisions, but Tony O'Neill used to have about the only cotton down in the south end of the county for several years, but there's I think there's close to 900 acres. I think Calvin was telling me in cotton. Now I'm not sure where they're going to haul it to. We had 9 cotton gins in Lawrence County, as a matter of fact, according to the Soil Conservation County mapping, and it gives a little history of Lawrence County. So that's interesting, and it sure looks good. It'd probably like it to dry out a little bit and get hot, and not all that rain might have been a little rough on it, but it really looks good. Hadn't been grown in years, and that's always a good thing when you've got a crop rotation going. It may be coming back right up in here. I don't know.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Good to hear you again, Wendell.
Thank you very much. That's a great question, and I've wondered that same thing. We might be seeing a little more of that.
I haven't noticed a lot of cotton as far as out my direction.
Yeah.
But now south end of the county or some of the southern.
Well, there's quite a bit right around. There's some on Valley Road, Hudson Road, and just here.
Oh,
and
is
there.
there?
Yes.
I haven't seen it. How about that?
So I understand it's probably close
But
to 900 acres.
Honestly, I guess I assume a lot of that because I'm so used to seeing it as beans. Until you really pay attention to it, you might not know passing by that it's cotton.
It's setting balls, and you can start to see.
Now you'll know it. You'll know it a little bit,
right?
Yeah, when it starts to come out.
Yeah. So I'm interested to see it. It sure looks like big old strong healthy plants. Of course, North Alabama's been getting rain. If you watch every time we're in a rain situation, there's just monster rains just training across North Alabama over and over. And
yeah.
So
the Lord has watered the plants this time.
Yes, and
that's right. And all the crops in my neck of the woods look really healthy.
For August, when this is usually about the hardest month on fescue and cool season grasses, pasture.
Right.
Of course, a lot of the crabgrass and the warm season stuff comes on right now, but we got a little dry there for one stretch, but it's been a really good growing year, and the row crops are going to be. I don't know where they're going to put all the corn. It's
There's really, a lot of corn.
It looks like it'll be a great yield,
and the beans look awesome.
The early beans are coming on, but they've got a ways to go. It could turn dry and kind of harm them, but the corn, is wow. It's going to be a whopper crop, the best I can tell, just looking at it from the road.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a stretch, though, there where I thought it was going to get hurt.
Well, it was looking rough. My little sheepies were kind of saying, well, where do we go next? And I rotated them. I've got it laid off in several smaller lots to make them graze more efficiently.
Well, so you have kind of retired on us.
I have actually retired.
You have actually retired. And so what does Wendell Smith spend his time doing these days? I know you got a little farm out there. I say little; it's a pretty good size farm.
Nah, it's not too big by most standards, but it's hard to keep up with sometimes by yourself. And had a couple of little health issues that we're trying to work through, and for a fun day, I would not recommend a cardiac catheterization. That's probably not. Just high on the recreational list.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, I hope all that went well.
Well, yeah, we're still plugging around, but I like to fish and hunt, and I build fishing rods and stuff. And Jim
really?
Smith couldn't prove it to you. I was supposed to make him one years ago and never got together with him. So Jim will remind me of that whenever I see him.
Whenever you see him. Now, what do you mean you build fishing rods?
Well, I'd like to do ultralight spinning. When I was a kid, I got into the little bitty reels and 4-pound line and for bluegill and things.
That's one of my favorite ways to fish.
And then the old way we did it, there was rods, cork handle with no reel seat or metal or anything on them.
Right.
And you put your reel on there and you electrical tape it on there.
Yep.
And it's light and the feel is wonderful. Well, I was needing some more rods. And I looked, and you can't find a Tennessee rod anywhere. They've all got newfangled reel seats and things on them. So I said, well, I'll just make my own. So I scrambled around, and I get little cork rings from Portugal where all the cork is grown, basically.
Yeah.
So it's just a ring and a hole in the middle. And I turned one of Daddy's, he had an old Craftsman 40s drill press, and I finagled it into a lathe so I could turn the cork handles. So I get the cork handle on an arbor and some sandpaper, and I turn the contour on it, and then I ream it to fit the blank. And,
so you're getting some blanks?
Yeah, there's several places that you can get rod blanks of various weights and power and so forth, and then you figure out the layout of your guides and things like that.
Now, are you doing this for the public much?
I've done a few for folks, but
Okay.
I hadn't built one in a while, so I've been doing one the last 2 days actually, and trying to get the fingers going again.
Oh, okay.
These the new concept on guides is very tiny, running guides very close together. The Japanese did a lot of studies on this, and you can look at slow motion pictures of the line going through the guides. But the catch on that is the guy making the rods has to wrap these tiny little guides.
Okay.
So I'm wrapping it with thread. And then you get that all tidied up, and you go back with epoxy.
Yes.
And seal, and that holds all the thread and everything in place.
Well, the only other rod maker that I knew, and I'm sure there's others, but the only other rod maker that I knew was Elmer Brown. He used to do it.
Yeah, one or two folks did it around. I just heard in,
and I'm
in
sure
this
there's
area.
others. I'm sure there's others.
But I don't. I did stay strictly with the Tennessee handles, and because that's just kind of my thing. And
so that's known as a Tennessee handle?
Well, that's called the Tennessee handle. We had some famous people. Stan Sloan, if you've ever heard of him, he was, I think he was a policeman maybe at Metro. But anyway, he was from Sparta and fished with those type. Billy Westmoreland was kind of my hero. He's from Salina, and he fished the pro circuit way back, in the early 70s.
Oh, really?
But everybody did bait casting and heavy stuff. Well, Billy Westmoreland would show up with a boat full of spinning rods and use light line and do the finesse type fishing. So Billy was one of my heroes, and he knew Dale Hollow backwards and forwards. And he wrote a nice little book called Them Old Brown Fish.
Them Old Brown Fish.
Yeah, talked about his technique and talked about Dale Hollow in the early days.
How about that?
So
that's interesting.
I still love Dale Hollow, and it's deep, clear water. So if you use a big line in Dale Hollow, the fish look at that and go, "I'm sorry, I'm not interested."
That's a trick, boys. So you got to use a light line.
So anyway, I just got into that and have had fun to make them for my family and give them away to them as presents.
I may have to trade you out of one of them.
Well, we can talk.
We may have to trade you out of one of those.
I got a few blanks hanging around there. I carried a few up to Slider, and they had some of them up at Charlie Brewer's.
Well, good.
Caroline.
I'm a candidate because I love that type fishing myself. That light line.
That's the most fun.
I just do. I'm not a super fisherman by any stretch, but
here's a good tale. I had a light. Went up to back in the spring, late spring, but went up below Pickwick Dam and was just throwing a little bitty spoon in the current, seeing if there was any stripe or bass there, and I had a hit. And I was using one of my rods with a 4-pound line, and it just kind of took off, and it was not responding to my pulling on it. It went where it wanted to.
Yeah.
So an hour and a half later, we finally started getting a glimpse of it. I'm pretty patient.
Yeah.
I was called Flathead Smith by my cousin one time. That's another story from Tim's Ford.
Okay.
Where I fought one for literally hours. But
really?
Anyway, after about an hour and a half, we got it up, and it was a flathead, I don't know, 25 or 30 pounds or something. And I said, boy, this is where it gets dangerous when you don't have much line out. If he makes a lunge in the 4-pound line. And so he broke my line after 4 hours.
Oh, my God.
After an hour and a half.
Hour and a half.
I did fight that one on Tim's Ford. We were in a tournament, my same cousin, and he wound up going to sleep on me in the boat. I just had to follow this fish around. Well, this is a tournament where you could win some pretty good stuff. And
yeah.
I thought it might be a rockfish or something, and then it just kept on. So about daylight, I finally got it in, and we got that one in the boat, and we carried it up there to the weigh-in place at the state park at Tim's Ford.
Yeah.
Wound up getting second place in the rough fish category, and so at the awards thing, they had Tom Mann emceeing that thing, and I got to go up there. He called me up there, and he says, "So tell me about how you caught that." And I said, "Well, I was fishing a flying rind." He said, "Well, you were smallmouth fishing." I said, "Yeah." So where'd you get it? I said, "Well, I hung him at the mouth of Rock Creek, and he drug me on down to whatever that next creek down was." He laughed, but it was fun to meet the immortal Tom Mann.
That's awesome. One of my favorite fishermen to watch was Jerry McGinnis.
Yep, I used to
I
watch.
used to love the Jerry McGinnis show.
That was good.
And that had that little music that play in the background, just kind
Right.
of gentle, and listen to him talk. He could just talk about it for a good half an hour, however long that show was.
Yep, I'm deviating from fishing, but along that lines, American Sportsman used to have an outdoor show like that. And Kurt Gowdy.
Kurt Gowdy was good too.
Now, he had Jimmy Dean on one time, and they were up in the Yukon moose hunting.
Oh, wow.
And Jimmy Dean, "Dad, come these bugs." He just kept swatting and carrying on. And finally, they see a moose, and Jimmy Dean goes, "Holy cow, that's as big as a house." And they said, don't, Jim, that's not the one we're after. He says, "What are you talking about? Not the one we're after." So that was so great. Jimmy Dean was in his prime, boy.
That's good. That's good. Those old shows are great. We used to watch those as a kid.
Right.
And I remember Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom.
Yeah.
I couldn't wait for that to come on either.
Yeah, while Jim wrestles this 90-pound snapping turtle, I'll sit here in the boat.
Yeah. He stayed safe in the helicopter or
That's right.
in the Jeep or wherever the heck it was. But Jim could handle it all. He could handle it all.
Our bluegrass bunch, we played a little corporate thing at Opryland at the motel one time.
Yeah.
And
now, who all was in your bluegrass?
well, it was just some guys around my little group in Donaldson, our neighborhood there, several of us. And,
Okay.
And one guy named Ron Bordage, for a while, he was from Michigan, and he was a great player. So we had 5 or 6 people. That's why we couldn't make any money. You know, we had several folks. But so anyway, we were over there and played. We'd play during the breaks. They'd go through, lectures and stuff, and then they'd have 20 minutes or so or 30 minutes between. And so we were playing there.
Oh, kind of background music for the break.
Well, yeah, but we weren't union, and so we were kind of frowned on for being there. But what the heck is a one day
Yeah.
deal? Well, Jim. Marlon's pal Jim. What was his last name? He'd get on Tonight Show all the time.
Oh, I don't. I know who you're talking about.
The guy that wrestled the.
Yeah.
Anyway.
What his last name
Yeah,
was?
I can't think. But anyway, he was there with all these big cats. I mean, there was leopards and tigers and everything, and they were out there by the pool. He had them. So we got out there looking. Well, this cheetah, they're pretty high strung. And boy, this cheetah was starting to come unglued, and Jim told everybody to back off, and they had to get him out of there. We played, and then we ran out to look at the big cats.
Oh, wow.
It was pretty interesting.
Those things could be dangerous.
Oh wow, it was clearly getting a little iffy.
Speaking of that, there's always been the "do we have mountain lions" discussion around here.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure, I'm not 100% by any stretch, that I actually saw one. Me and Teresa saw it together. And it was out on near Napier, out that way. It was dusky dark, and it crossed the road in front of us.
Now this was a buckskin looking.
Yeah. Pretty much. And like I said, I could not 100% swear to it, but she and I both saw it, and we were both like, "What was that?" And I think it was.
That for several years there was a gentleman here in town that would come to the extension office, and he had, was seeing one. He believed, and he wanted. I said, "Well, we're kind of educational," and I said, "There's nothing. TWRA's really people to talk to," but he brought like hoof paw prints and said he found a cache of like deer carcasses and whatever, and he said, "I've seen this thing multiple times," and he actually sent off some of the scat, I think, and they came back with a DNA, if I'm not mistaken. Now this is many years ago, but he and I said, "Well, sir, I don't." you don't have to convince me. You've got pretty compelling evidence, but there's just really nothing I can do about it. And TWRA, but they're around. They're in the Smokies, and they've put elk and things up in northern Cumberland and the Royal Blue up there. And I wouldn't rule anything out. We get black bears come out of North Mississippi.
I was going to say, every once in a while we hear of a black bear too, don't we?
Yeah, my understanding is that they come out of some of the wooded North Mississippi areas, but black bears are spreading across,
I've heard that.
Crossville and Grundy County direction, and just kind of spreading back to the west quite a bit.
Yeah, interesting.
So I wouldn't. If you saw it, I believe you.
Yeah. Wendel Smith with us here. Of course, Wendel's been a part of the WDXE family here for quite some time. No stranger to WDXE at all. And we appreciate you being in here with us. The phone lines, by the way, if you want to talk to Wendel, is 766-9393. We got about 15 minutes left before we'll have to go and hit the hard break.
Well, but Jeff, I will say it's an honor and pleasure to be here with you. Back in the very early days, we had Farm City Day and stuff on the square, and we said somebody needs to go to the radio station and let everybody know what we're doing.
Yeah.
Well, nobody wanted to go over there and do it of the extension crew. And I said, well, I know Jack and Elrod. I met Jack early on, and what a great guy. I mean, and so
all of them.
That's right. And so I said, well, I'll go over there, and I'm pretty sure they'll let me on. And so I went over there, and then he said, well, if you want to come back anytime about doing stuff, and I said, well, I might just do that. And
so that's how that started.
Kind of slowly worked into it. Right there. And
became a regular.
I used to hang around with Ronnie there for quite a while, and would take calls and just talk about. I usually would come up with some pertinent topics, time-related to horticulture, and take calls and handle them live on the air. Sometimes that could be interesting.
Yes,
as you know,
always. I thought, and very good. We don't have that going for us at the moment. We could, I guess.
Well, I could. I'm kind of let things dust settle and stuff, and got over some problems health-wise and things, and trying to stay.
Well, the door's always open.
Well, I appreciate that, but it's always fun. Radio is and I used to tell the higher-ups when they wondered, what the heck are you doing? I said, well, I do radio, and I said it's very powerful, and it reaches way more people than you might think. Yeah. And so I've always been a fan of radio.
Well, I have too.
And it's a very powerful, and it's on, and people listen. You go into a store or something, and it's on, and people get in their cars, and the thought was, well, everybody will just be streaming and not do FM or AM radio. But that's not the case.
Not really.
And I don't think it will be the case.
No, I think people still enjoy their radios.
It's great.
It is neat that we've got all the other accessories, our phones and these other, that we can access any kind of music anytime we want to. But still, there's a convenience about jumping in, just hitting the radio button, and let them worry about what they play you.
Yep.
Or let them talk to you about whatever they're talking about. And I kind of pick up on that. I just like it.
Back in the old days, Vanderbilt WRVU was a little low wattage station, but they played the interesting music and stuff you wouldn't hear anywhere else. And then MTSU had their own WMOT.
Yes.
Was FM that I could get pretty well, and they played, like I say, stuff you wouldn't hear.
The hippie farm in Summertown.
Yeah.
They have their own little low power radio station that just serves their little community right there. And I don't know if they still do it or not, but years ago when I was dealing with them in the media business that we were in, they had a little low power radio. And when I would go up there, I would always turn it on because you can't get it but anywhere right there at the farm.
Yeah.
But a little low power station. And of course, they would be playing either some of their music or something else or something, whatever. It wasn't like they had somebody in the studio all the time.
When they came to Middle Tennessee, and I was in high school there in Donaldson, and all this procession of buses came in there, and they kind of stopped, and they went out and camped at Old Hickory Lake. I think for a few days, and they were looking.
That's true.
They were looking for a bunch of several of my friends. I didn't ever get out there to visit with them, but let's go check them out. and went out there, and of course they were looking around for a place to buy a bunch of land. And I guess California money, even back then, would go a lot further in Tennessee than.
Hadn't thought about that, but yeah, you're probably right.
You know, they could have bought
California money,
a small spot in California, but they came out here and checked out the Summertown, north of Summertown area there.
One of the guys that I worked with, his name was Phil Schweitzer. He's still there at the farm. Now, he left for a period of time, but he was one of the originals. In fact, him and a handful more actually came by themselves and negotiated and bought the farm.
Ah.
And I got to meet him and know him. Super nice guy, a very well educated guy.
Yeah, some pretty sharp customers there amongst them, huh?
He ended up going after they started the farm. He left for a while and worked in Washington D.C. Not in government, but he worked for some company that developed something or whatever. Anyway, in his latter years, he come back to the farm and lives there now. So that's and a super guy. And he, by the way, is a tremendous guitar player.
Is that right?
The Chet Atkins style.
Wow.
Finger picking, Leo Kottke, that kind of deal. Mm-hmm. He's that kind of player.
That's great stuff, right there.
Yeah, good stuff. And I've always admired somebody who can do that. Doug Stevenson was his partner in the video business up there, and he's also an accomplished musician.
Is that right?
And played quite a bit. So
very interesting bunch that came in, and
they were. Of course, they stood everybody on their heads there for a little while because they were like didn't know what to expect from these people. I remember them coming to the David Crockett State Park pool in 2 bus loads, and got out and bailed out of there. There was I don't know how many. This was way back when, but they came to the Crockett pool. It may have been maybe it was just 1 bus, but it seems like my memory there was 2 buses full of these guys and kids. They were young people, coming to swim at the pool.
When I was at the fertilizer building over there at the co-op, there was a young lady that would come once a year over there, and she wanted urea fertilizer, and she was the tie-dyed shirt lady company,
okay.
And they use that urea. Somehow it sets the dyes. They mixed that in when they were dyeing the shirts, and she said it will set the dye into the fabric so it doesn't fade out.
Well, they evolved over the years. They went from being a total commune to incorporating themselves.
Capitalism became okay.
And it became all right. They incorporated themselves, got a board of directors, and now you actually have to pay to live on the farm and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
it's
I
a whole
haven't
different.
kept
it's
track.
a whole different ball game.
Is that right?
Yeah, most of them are entrepreneurs of one kind or another.
Yeah, they filled different niches in the beginning and kept each other going.
Last I heard, there was a couple of hundred people maybe that live there now. Of course, there was a lot more.
How big was that? You might know that. How many acres?
A couple thousand acres.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, it's a couple thousand, and they've been involved in some other conservation efforts as well, buying some more land that adjoins them and all that kind of stuff. So
640 acres is a square mile, just to give you an idea of how big that.
It's a big place.
That's a big old place,
right? Big place. Yeah, very big place. That's pretty awesome. I don't know how we got off on that, but
well, you just never know where you have to go.
That's interesting.
I would have been heavily diagnosed with ADD and ADHD and every other thing that went along with it. As a kid, I was.
You mentioned the Farm City days.
Yeah.
And when did that start, and how did that start?
Well, that started just really about the first year I went over there. I think's about when we started that. And Salute to Agriculture Week, we started. The extension higher-ups are wanting you to raise community awareness and things, and so that's one thing we
and the
came up with.
4-H is kind of handled out of that office too, is it not?
Yes, 4-H. So extension is CRD, Community and Resource Development. So we worked with the community clubs. It's just straight ag, so row crop, pasture, and everything else. Horticulture became bigger and bigger. When I came, we would never see Amish in the office hardly. And so they were going to start that auction, and I started working in Calvin also at with some grower meetings and things, and pretty soon the Amish and vegetable growing was a major part of my.
Yeah.
So diseases, and so Extension has specialists that are statewide. In other words, a vegetable specialist or a forestry specialist, and they travel around the state and assist agents. But I say they had one of the best jobs in Extension. We get questions about everything, and so you're jack of all trades sort of at the local level. But forestry extension specialist, he's doing forestry, and that's all. So he goes around the state and helps agents and helps us hold meetings. And
well, the thing that's interesting about it to me is how community oriented that is with everything that it touches, because it just does. I mean, you got the community clubs, you've got the 4-H, you got all these areas that are kind of intertwined and connected, and even the Amish with their vegetable growing and farming community. It's like we're all kind of touching each other a little bit.
Yeah. So a typical extension office in any decent sized county, we've got ag agents. Possibly a horticulture agent, but you have what's known as FCE, which is Family and Consumer Education, and so Margie Hudson was our agent for a long time, and Stacy's over there now, and then there's 4-H. So that's the main three branches of Extension: 4-H, Family and Consumer Education, and then Adult Ag. And most counties that are very big have an agent or more, in each category.
And there were there seems like and correct me if I'm wrong, but did they do other things like I guess canning and sewing and
yes,
all those other things?
And so that would be the FCE branch right there. We checked canners for folks. They would bring in a pressure canner, and not knowing whether the pressure gauge was correct or how much pressure it was holding, which has everything to do with the safety and how how well you can do that. Because with canning, botulism, that's why you pressure can instead of just water bath canning, is to be able to raise the temperature up for a long enough time to kill out the botulism.
Sure.
And so we checked those, but those type things were FCE, and there's an organization of FCS ladies and stuff here in the county that. So that's that branch, and then 4-H goes in several different directions, just depending on the local agents. We did in schools. I actually started out as a partial 4-H agent, and so I went and did fourth grade in
Is
schools.
that when that starts, at fourth grade?
Yeah, generally. Counties do it differently, but that's generally when we started. We'd do 4 through 6 was in-school meetings. They would set us a amount of time in the classroom, and we'd come once a month and meet, and we'd elect officers, and then we'd have topics and, just try to do a little character building and get everybody pulling in the same direction, have fun, and learn some things. So we would do speeches and demonstrations.
There was a 4-H speeching.
Yep.
The chick chain was part of that too, or is that different?
Well, it's 4-H, but it's done outside the classroom.
Outside the classroom.
Yeah, so speeches and demonstrations where you teach us how to do something. And
now the fair's coming up. We don't have a lot of time left, a couple of minutes, but it's harvest time. The fair's coming up, and of course, people will be bringing in their goods and wares to the exhibits.
Yep.
And that's always been a part of what was tied to this too.
Right. Extension had always worked with the fairs, and most counties work with the local fairs, and we get judges lined up from outside the county and help. With the livestock or the.
I've always wondered how you got to be the pie judge.
Yeah.
I've been wondering if anybody would ever ask me to be the pie judge, but so far I haven't been asked.
Well, okay. Maybe I can put a word in for you. I don't know. I don't carry much weight around there anymore. Margie.
I'm carrying too much weight. That's the problem.
Margie Hudson, our family FCE agent, early on started doing the Pie Day, celebrating Pie Day with a contest here. And so we got some judges over there and
there's
stuff.
There's a couple of things I want to judge is the pies, and then there's the barbecue judging. You got to get that done.
Now
That's a whole different category.
I wanted to come up with one more rule for that
Yeah.
pie contest, but they wouldn't let me. I said, we'll put at the bottom that all entries become property of Lawrence County Extension.
That's a good idea.
So, you could eat your quiche and your savory stuff and then have a fudge pie for dessert.
Everybody, we have enjoyed a visit with Wendell Smith. And Wendell, the door's open. Hope you come back and be with us. And you don't have to come during the 8 o'clock hour. You can come for that early morning stuff one time.
Yeah, that sounds good. I try to get up and watch the sunrise and usually head outdoors and stuff early on. And, so I appreciate it, Jeff. Honor, as I say, to be with you without question. One of our community's finest.
Oh, my. Well, thank you very much. And I appreciate you being here. We are going to have to hit the hard break, though, guys. That's going to wrap it up for us. We'll see you next time, Wendell.
Thanks, Jeff.
See you, buddy.
Former President Trump may have a lot of legal issues, but he's number one by a lot in the first Fox News Power Rankings for the 2024 Republican president.